Let this land be given, part 2 is the title of today's message, taken from Numbers chapter 32 and verse 20 to 42. We began with this outline, a self-preserving request, verse 1 to 15, as the two tribes came to Moses because they had many flock to request for a grazing land in Gilead that was available to them after the conquest. A selfless vow, verse 16 to 19, where you would see them committing to, after receiving their inheritance, to go forth to the promised land or go forth to Canaan to fight. A solemn agreement, verse 20 to 32, they agreed to the terms that they would not have any inheritance in the promised land, but their inheritance will be on the east side of Jordan, and a sealed inheritance. The agreement was made so that they would be given possession of the land. The territory was marked out for them. So they unanimously, Matthew Henry observed, agree, as we saw last week when we left off, to the provisos and conditions of the grant, and do, as it were, give bond for performance by a solemn promise. Thy servants will do as my Lord commandeth. Their brethren had all contributed their assistance to the conquest of this country, which they desired for a possession, and therefore they owned themselves obliged in justice to help them in the conquest of that which was to be their possession. Having received kindness, we ought to return it, though it was not so conditioned when we received it. We may suppose that this promise was understood on both sides, so as not to oblige all that were numbered of these tribes to go over armed, but those only that were fittest for the expedition, who would be most serviceable, while it was necessary that some should be left to till the ground and guard the country. Accordingly, we find that about 40,000 of the 2.5 tribes went over armed. Joshua 4 verse 13, whereas the whole number was about 100,000. So this was where we left off last week. And Moses, verse 20, said unto them, if ye will do this thing, if ye will go over armed before the Lord to war, and will go all of you armed over Jordan before the Lord, until he hath driven out his enemies from before him, and the land be subdued before the Lord, then afterward ye shall return and be guiltless before the Lord and before Israel, and this land shall be your possession before the Lord. But if ye will not do so, behold, ye have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. The 2.5 tribes solemnly vowed and agreed to join the rest of the tribes to help obtain their inheritance through conquest. There will be sacrifice. They have willingly agreed to bear the burden of their brethren, as their brethren had borne it for them when in the earlier conquest on the east of Jordan that sealed their inheritance. It was their word before the Lord that Moses sought to bind as an oath to fulfill their obligation to the other tribes. And the famous phrase that we often hear, and if ye will not do so, behold, ye have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. The vows that we make are important, and you recall there was a time when Israel made a vow with the Gibeonites when Joshua began to conquer the land. And the vow with the Gibeonites meant that they were to leave the Gibeonites alone in their territory, although the Gibeonites came to them through deceit. And later on, when Israel occupied the land, and they did not fulfill that oath to the Gibeonites. The oath that was given to the Gibeonites was not fulfilled during the time of Saul. And during the time of David, there was 3 years of famine. And during the time of the famine, they were asking, what happened? Why like that? So they had to go to the Gibeonites, and God gave them peace. So here you would see there are binding, these things are binding in the sight of the Lord. God knows and remembers our vows before Him and holds us accountable to Him in our conscience. When we fail to uphold our word and do our duties, it is sin. And God judges us after our failure to do our duties. The fulfilling of God's will and glory for the nation requires each tribe to be courageous to fulfill their national obligations. So each one to serve in an area that the Lord would enable them in order that the nation would be able to function as a whole for the glory of God. Proverbs 13 verse 21 says, "Evil pursueth sinners, but to the righteous good shall be repaid." For the sinners, well, God comes after them. And in Isaiah 59 verse 1 to 2, it is further said, "Behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened, that He cannot save, neither His ear heavy, that He cannot hear. But in your iniquities have separated you and your God, and your sins have hid His face from you, that He will not hear." So if you would do the will of God, can God not save us, even if we have to walk the hard way, which the Lord Himself has trod before us? Would we not be willing to follow Him and walk that way, albeit a way of sacrifice? When the 40 men cross over the Jordan River, their families would not know if they will come back alive. So there was a price that they had to pay, in the sense that they knew that they were going into battle and that they had to be courageous, and that there is a stake involved, and everyone must participate and not shrink from their responsibility. And it's easy to do so. We want to save our own skin. We want to save ourselves, and therefore we fail in our obligation to the law that God has given for the group to advance in the sight of God, for the church to advance. Tribulation and anguish upon every soul of men that doeth evil, of the Jew first, and also of the Gentiles. Romans 2:9. Therefore, judge nothing before the time until the Lord come, who both will bring to light the hidden things of darkness and will make manifest the counsels of the heart. Then shall every man have praise of God. So here we say this, that God be the one to finally arbitrate. On hindsight, the two and a half tribes for a season did fulfill their obligations. Joshua 22 verse 1 to 6 is a perspective after they conquered the land, that they have indeed, these two and a half tribes have indeed fulfilled their promises. Then Joshua called the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh, and said unto them, Ye have kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, and have obeyed my voice in all that I commanded you. Ye have not left your brethren this many days unto this day, but have kept the charge of the commandment of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God hath given you rest unto your brethren, as He promised them. Therefore, now return ye and get you unto your tents and unto the land of your possessions, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side Jordan, but make diligent heed to do the commandment and the law, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, charged you to love the Lord thy God and walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments and to cleave unto him and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. So Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went into their tents. It was a work that they did not fail to do, a promise that they did not fail to keep. And so verse 7 to 9 of Joshua 22 tells us the aftermath of their obedience. And to the one half of the tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given possession in Bashan, but unto the other tribe, the other half thereof gave Joshua among their brethren on this side Jordan westward. And when Joshua sent them away also unto their tents, then he blessed them and said unto them, saying, Return with much riches unto your tents, and with very much cattle, with silver, and with gold, with brass, and with iron, and with much raiment, very much raiment. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brethren. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh returned and departed from the children of Israel out of Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go unto the country of Gilead, to the land of their possession, which they were possessed according to the word of the Lord by the hand of Moses. Each time there is a battle to be fought, there will be different responses from the soldiers. There will be those who will be courageous and will be moved forward, filled with the Spirit of God. And there were those who will be frightened. And there will be those who would not go. And here we see that for the 2.5 tribes, they have received their inheritance. God had blessed them, and they did so, fulfill their obligation. Verse 24, Moses said to them, Build you cities for your little ones, and folds for your sheep, and do that which hath proceeded out of your mouth. And the children of Gad and the children of Reuben spake unto Moses, saying, Thy servants will do as my Lord commandeth. Our little ones, our wives, our flocks, and all our cattle shall be there in the cities of Gilead. But thy servants will pass over, every man armed for war before the Lord to battle, as my Lord saith. So concerning them, Moses commanded Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the chief priests of the tribes of the children of Israel. Verse 29, And Moses said to them, If the children of Gad and the children of Reuben will pass with you over Jordan, every man armed to battle before the Lord, and the land shall be subdued before you, then ye shall give them the land of Gilead for a possession. But if they will not pass over with you armed, and they shall have possessions among you in the land of Canaan, and the children of Gad and the children of Reuben answered, saying, As the Lord hath said unto thy servants, so will we do. We will pass over armed before the Lord into the land of Canaan, that the possession of our inheritance on this side Jordan may be ours. So it was an advance agreement or inheritance that was given in advance, pending the condition that they would fulfill their obligations before the Lord and before his people. And so you will observe here that they were allowed to build their cities, they were allowed to settle down, and you see, God has his very marvelous way of doing what is needful, in the sense that when the tribes came to occupy those land from the Amorites that were occupied previously by the Amorites, those land were just fitted for the conditions of several of the tribes. And they were also fitted, right, in the sense that in a certain way to be given as a way by which there is a settlement to the inheritance. Reuben was the firstborn. Manasseh was of the tribe of Joseph. So there were some requirements there to fulfill, so that the people would be to understand that, yeah, indeed, this is what is required. So you see here that the people came forward, and Moses also did confirmed after evaluating what was needful, right, that there was indeed some settlement to ensure, right, that the promised land, the land that was conquered on the eastern side, would already have been properly allocated and occupied and tended to. So there was this aspects that was done. And our fourth thought, a sealed inheritance. And Moses gave them, even the children of Gad, and to the children of Reuben and the half-tribe of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, the land, with the cities thereof, in the coast, even the cities of the country round about. So you see how Moses settles the matter with Eleazar, the high priest, and Joshua, who was to be his successor, knowing that he would not be there at that time, but he would place the execution of it in the hands of Joshua. He gives them an estate upon condition, leaving it to Joshua, if they would fulfill the condition, to declare the estate absolute, if they will not go over with you. And he does not say, you will give them no inheritance at all, but you shall not give them this inheritance which they covet. If their men, their soldiers will not come over with you, and compel the whole tribes to come over, and let them take their lot with their brethren, and fare as they fare, they have possession in Canaan, and let them not expect that the Lord will favor them. This was the command of Matthew Henry. Hereupon they repeat their promise to adhere to their brethren. And so Moses settles them in the land that they desire. He gave them their possession, the half-tribe of Manasseh coming in with them for a share. And you see also that there was still a need to take possession of a certain part of the land, which they did dispossess out of the Amorites. Let them win it, wear it, take it, get it. So they did so, and they were given their inheritance. And the settlement of these tribes, you see, they built the cities, they repaired them, and so they had a head start, as it were, to the inheritance, a head start. And the thing is this, that you see, the land was like that, but there were 12 tribes. How to divide? Some had to receive first, some have to receive later, and there was a peaceful settlement. Each one were willing to do their part. There was a sacrifice involved, right? They had to send, the 2.5 tribes had to send their men over, although they already had the comforts of the land. But their other brethren do not have the comforts of the land, and the land was still possessed by the enemy. And so they had to understand, they have to have that obligation, to do their part. And it's so important, isn't it? Here we speak about the overall unity of the nation. Right? If everyone would be willing, right, to follow and come along, right, there will be proper, we said, movement, right, for the nation to fulfill the will of God. But if there will not be, just imagine, right, that amongst the 2.5 tribes there was no settlement, then they could not progress, isn't it? And if they are not willing to do what they were supposed to do, right? So here you see that following the Lord, always there is involved a sacrifice. And the Lord wants us to understand this so that when it helps us to de-self ourselves. Right? De-self ourselves. Right? Jesus says, if you would follow me, deny yourself, take up the cross, and follow me. To deny ourselves and to take up the cross, that's not a simple thing. Right? But it is a test of faith. It is also a test of true discipleship. True or not, right? There is a test. And the Lord gives the test. And the Lord also exposes, right, the weakness, I would even say the deceptions. And so it allows us to see more clearly, isn't it? So that we would be able to understand, right? There are those who said, oh, the price is too high for me to pay. I will go back. You remember the scribes who came to Jesus and they went off because they were not willing to pay the price. Following the Lord, that is a cost of discipleship. And here you see the tribes, they were willing, right, to bear the cost, pay the price, and understand that there is a journey that the Lord has given for the nation to move forward together. And so you see here that the Lord allowed the 2.5 tribes the settlement, and there was no record, right, of any dispute from any of the other tribes. Right? They didn't have their land yet. They still have their cattle and their loved ones with them that will have to go over the Jordan River to face the enemy, to battle. But for those who have settled down, you see that they set the example also. Verse 38, and Nebo and Baal-Meon, their names were being changed. So they changed the names of these places. Matthew Henry said, well, it shows forth their authority. Right? The change of names signify the change of their owners. And because their names were idolatrous, and therefore, right, they carried with them a wrong connotation. Right? So the names were changed so that the gods of the land are not, even their names are not given over to influence the later generations. Nebo and Baal were the names of their gods, and they were forbidden to make mention of them. Exodus 23 verse 13, which we saw in our earlier study. And in all these things that I've said unto you, be circumspect, and make no mention of the name of the other gods, neither let it be heard out of your mouth. Hosea 2 verse 17. For I will take away the names of Baalim out of thy mouth, or her mouth, and they shall no more be remembered by their name. So when they occupied the place, what it means, right, is that the Lord's name, the Lord's honor is placed there. Right? The Lord's name, the Lord's honor is placed there. And Nebal and Baal are the names of their gods, and so they were forbidden to mention them. And you will see also that these tribes are now placed first before the other tribes. And you would see also that this will be the tribes that were also later on were carried away in the captivity by the Assyrians. So these were the northern tribes, the northern 10 tribes. And this you see in the Lord shows us such a portion. Thus, Matthew Henry says, providence sometimes observe in balancing prosperity and adversity. He sets the one over against the other. In conclusion, the fulfillment of God's plan came step by step. He provided the vision and led his people to fulfill it to their blessing. From slaves to free men, from squatters to landowners, from earth to heaven. Let us do our duties before him. May the Lord's name be praised. Amen.